Chapter 1. The Man I Didn't Want to See Again, and the Day He Walked Back into My Life. Theo hated motivational quotes, especially the ones about fate and healing, and running into exactly who you need the moment you stop running. They sounded like something a person with soft hands and no trauma would write in a gratitude journal beside a turmeric latte. He clicked his pen harder against the rim of his notebook, glaring at the open document on his laptop. The self-help manuscript was nothing short of an ego trip. Half therapy jargon, half diary confessional, with a tone so self-congratulatory it made his teeth hurt. But Theo needed the job. Rent was overdue, and his bank account had started making those passive-aggressive, low-balance alerts more often than his mother used to text him. So here he was, in a downtown cafe that reeked of cinnamon syrup and startup dreams, editing someone else's redemption arc while ignoring the glaring holes in his own. The door chimed as someone walked in. Theo didn't look up. He had grown allergic to distractions, but then, that voice. Smooth, deep, familiar. "I thought that was you." Theo's spine stiffened. He didn't have to look. His whole body recognized it before his brain could curse fate properly. He turned slowly, dragging his eyes upward, and there he was, Zion. Older now, broader through the shoulders, warm brown skin framed by a dark green hoodie that made his eyes look unfairly soft. His hair had grown out into loose curls that looked effortless, and his posture held that easy confidence Theo had always secretly envied, and hated, and missed. "Wow," Theo said flatly, snapping his laptop shut like a shield. "I should have known the universe hated me this month," Zion chuckled. "You still dramatic as hell, huh? You still stalking me? Or is this just the part where I wake up from a very specific nightmare?" Zion smirked, leaning casually against the table like he had every right to invade Theo's personal space. "It's been a while. You still run from things? Or just me?" That hit like a sucker punch. Theo stood so quickly his chair scraped back with a screech. His body moved before his brain could stop it. Just like high school, when running was the only thing that made sense. "I'm leaving," he said. Zion's expression didn't change. No smugness, no amusement, just calm patience, the kind that infuriated Theo more than cruelty ever had. "You always do." Theo made it to the door. Almost. But his legs wobbled. Just a little. Maybe from standing too fast, or maybe because he hadn't eaten anything today except for a stale croissant and half a bottle of cold brew. Or maybe it was the way his heart had started slamming against his ribs the moment he heard Zion's voice. He stumbled, and then everything tilted, but he didn't hit the ground. Zion's arms were around him, firm, steady, one hand at his back, one cradling the back of his head like muscle memory. "Got you," Zion murmured. Theo's breath caught. "Let go of me." "You're dizzy." "I'm fine." Zion didn't let go. "You're literally not standing, Theo." He hated the way his name sounded in Zion's voice, like something remembered, like something cared for. "Let me go." Zion hesitated. Then slowly he eased Theo onto a nearby bench, keeping a hand near his shoulder as if he didn't trust gravity to behave. Theo's cheeks burned. Not from embarrassment. No, that would imply he cared. And he didn't. He didn't care. Not about Zion. Not anymore. Except his body was still buzzing from that contact. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Zion said quietly. "Good to know you're still a condescending ass." Zion's lips twitched. "Nah, just a concerned one." Theo glared at him, pulse still tripping over itself. "What are you even doing here?" "I work here." Theo blinked. "At the cafe?" Zion shook his head. "Next door. Physical therapy clinic. I'm the co-founder." Theo groaned. "Of course you are. You're every wellness cliche in a hoodie. You're editing Candace Vale's memoir, right?" Theo narrowed his eyes. "How the hell do you?" "She's my client. She mentioned hiring a freelancer named Theo who edits like he's stabbing the words into submission. I had a hunch." Theo stood again, slower this time. "Well, tell your little mindfulness empire I quit." "You didn't even meet her yet." "Don't need to." Zion tilted his head, a single curl falling into his eye. "You're still scared of me." Theo scoffed. "Scared? Of you?" Zion didn't move closer, but his voice dropped, steady and deliberate. "I was a kid. A stupid one. I said things I didn't understand, but I never hated you. Not once." Theo froze. "I think I knew you were different," Zion continued, "and I didn't know how to deal with it, so I did what all dumb teenagers do. I tried to push it away." Theo's throat tightened. Zion added, softer, "I never forgot what I said to you that day, behind the gym. You remember it?" Theo did. Of course he did. Zion calling him a mistake, Theo shoving him. That moment, fury and shame and something else burning under the surface. That was the last time they'd spoken. Until now. I'm not here to rewrite history, Zion said, but if you ever stop running, I'll be here. Theo left without a word. 3 days later, he regretted that exit, not because of Zion, because of his stupid ankle. One overenthusiastic treadmill sprint later, and he was sitting in the emergency room, humiliated, broke, and bruised in every sense of the word. The nurse had given him a boot and a list of recommended clinics. And of course, Zion's clinic was the first on the list. Theo ignored it, until the second clinic said they weren't accepting new patients, and the third charged triple, and the fourth was a little backed up until late next month. So Theo sat in his dark apartment, his foot elevated on a pile of laundry, staring at Zion's clinic number like it was a loaded gun. He didn't want to call, but he couldn't walk. And when he finally pressed dial, and Zion picked up on the second ring, all he said was, "I've been waiting for you to stop being stubborn." The clinic was annoyingly warm. Not just the temperature. Everything inside screamed comfort. Soft lighting, plants that weren't dying, a basket of tea bags in the corner. It even smelled like vanilla and mint. Zion greeted him in the lobby, clipboard in hand. "You came." Theo limped past him. "You're the cheapest option. Don't get cocky." Zion just grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it." Theo glanced at him, then away. "This doesn't mean we're friends. Never said we were. Or that I forgive you." "I didn't ask." Theo finally turned, squinting at him. "Why are you being so decent?" Zion's smile softened. "Maybe because I remember who you were, and I want to know who you are now." Theo's stomach flipped. He didn't want this. He didn't want him. But as Zion knelt beside him to check his ankle, his touch gentle, eyes focused, Theo didn't flinch. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like running. Not yet. Chapter 2. Physical therapy and verbal sparring. Why does he still know how to hurt me? The therapy table was cold. Theo sat on the edge of it, arms crossed like a shield across his chest, glaring at the floor as if it personally offended him. Zion was 5 feet away, writing notes on a clipboard, every movement calm and calculated. "This is ridiculous," Theo muttered. Zion didn't look up. "What part?" "All of it. Me. Hear you." "That's specific," Zion said lightly. Theo narrowed his eyes. "You think you're funny now?" "I think I've always been funny. You were just too mad to notice." Theo scoffed and leaned back slightly. Too fast. His ankle twinged, and he hissed through his teeth. Zion was beside him in seconds. "Easy. Don't touch me." Zion stopped, but didn't move away. "You asked for my help. I asked for physical therapy, not whatever this is." Zion's voice softened. "This is physical therapy." His hands hovered near Theo's leg. He waited. When Theo didn't stop him again, he carefully adjusted the brace, fingers precise and warm. Theo hated how his skin reacted. Like it remembered Zion, like it trusted him before Theo gave it permission. He looked away, jaw clenched. "You still talk like you're trying to fix everything." Zion glanced up. "And you still talk like nothing's broken." Theo's stomach twisted. The first week of sessions was tolerable. Barely. Zion was professional. Frustratingly gentle. He explained everything he did, gave Theo space, and never pushed past a line. And that made it worse. Because Theo remembered. He remembered Zion as the kid who knocked his books out of his hands and smirked when Theo cried. The one who made every day at school feel like walking through fire barefoot. The one who said, "Boys like you don't belong on our team." But now Zion helped him stretch with quiet care, lifting Theo's ankle with practiced strength. He joked about Theo's stubbornness, brought him lemon water with fresh mint, and offered playlists labeled therapy, but not boring. "Don't think this makes us friends," Theo said during one session, sweat dampening the edge of his collar. "I'm not asking to be your friend," Zion replied, kneeling beside him. "I just don't want to be your ghost." Theo froze at that. Zion looked up at him, chest rising slowly. "You look at me like I'm still haunting you." Theo swallowed thickly. "Maybe you are." On the 5th session, Theo tripped. It wasn't dramatic, just a misplaced foot while getting off the machine. His palms hit the floor hard, and he bit back a curse as the sting bloomed across his skin. Zion was there in a blink, crouching beside him. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Theo snapped, but his hands were bleeding. Small scrapes, nothing serious. Zion didn't flinch. He helped him up, guided him to the bench, and pulled out the first aid kit without a word. Theo tried to pull away. I can do it. Zion ignored him, gently taking Theo's wrist in one hand and dabbing at the cuts with the other. You still smell like cinnamon, Theo muttered, more bitter than amused. Zion raised a brow. You remember how I smell? Theo looked away. The silence between them stretched. Then Zion's thumb brushed a spot too tender, and Theo flinched. Not from pain. Zion paused. Their eyes met. Everything around them went still. The bandage lay halfway on Theo's palm. Zion's hand lingered just a second too long. Theo's breath hitched. And then he jerked away. I'm fine. Zion sat back, tension flickering across his features. You always say that. Theo stood too quickly, swaying slightly. Stop pretending you know me. Zion didn't argue, just watched him with those two honest eyes. Theo hated that look, the one that made him feel seen. The dreams came that night. Theo hadn't had them in years. Not since the night he left town with nothing but a backpack and a bus ticket. But now he saw it again, the fluorescent hallway, the roar of blood in his ears, Zion's voice behind him. Theo, wait. He remembered how his fists had clenched, how he told himself not to turn around, that if he looked back, it would break him. But in the dream, he turned. And Zion was running, eyes wide, voice raw, saying something Theo never heard because he woke up gasping, heart thundering, drenched in sweat. He pressed his hands to his face. It was just a dream. Except it wasn't. It was memory, half-buried and angry and aching. The next morning, the clinic was busy. Theo hated it. Too many eyes, too many people who used to know him as that kid. The one who disappeared, the one who had a breakdown, the one who was a little too sharp, too loud, too much. He sat stiffly in the waiting room, earbuds in, not playing anything, just pretending. Zion appeared with a small smile. Ready? No. Zion just waited. Theo followed. Inside, they passed a woman he vaguely recognized. Casey, maybe? Former cheerleader. Still perfect. She did a double take. Theo? Theo tensed. Yeah? Her smile was practiced. Wow, it's been forever. Zion watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. Casey laughed lightly. Still the same, huh? You always were hard to pin down. Theo smiled without humor. And you were always good at making people want to vanish. Zion placed a hand between them, not touching either of them, just blocking the energy. He's my patient, he said gently. We've got a session. Casey blinked. Oh, of course. I just meant... Zion didn't smile. Good to see you, Casey. He guided Theo away. Theo said nothing until they were alone in the therapy room. You didn't have to do that. Zion crouched beside the equipment, didn't like the way she talked to you. She was always like that. Then she still sucks. Theo barked a short laugh. You defending me now? Would have done it back then if I wasn't such a coward. Theo's smile faltered. Zion looked at him. I wasn't proud of who I was. Theo's voice was low. Neither was I. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Zion said softly, You ready to stretch? Only if you don't start with some metaphor about bending so you don't break. Zion chuckled. No promises. The intimacy came quietly. It crept in through the cracks Theo didn't know he'd left open. The way Zion handed him water after every session, cold, always with lemon. The way he adjusted the pillow beneath Theo's back without asking, murmuring, You always tense up on your left side. The way their jokes softened into conversations. And those conversations, about movies, food, old teachers, morphed into confessions. I hated gym class, Theo said one afternoon, staring at the ceiling while Zion massaged his calf. I used to fake asthma just to sit out, Zion smirked. I remember. You sold it pretty well. I used to wish you'd trip during relays. I did. Senior year. Theo blinked. That was me, Zion stared. You sabotaged me? Theo shrugged. I was petty. Zion burst out laughing. I thought someone hexed my shoelaces. Theo smiled before he could stop it. Zion noticed. He always noticed, and that night Theo lay in bed wondering if maybe, just maybe, the worst part of being around Zion wasn't the memory of pain, but the way it was starting to hurt less. And that scared him more than anything else. Chapter 3. Close Quarters and Closer Confessions. Who's really trying to heal whom? Theo didn't believe in omens, but when his ceiling started leaking directly onto his bed, he briefly considered punching the sky. This is why I don't trust ceilings, he muttered, holding a saucepan under the steady drip-drip of betrayal. Or landlords. Or gravity. The property manager mumbled something about delayed repairs and acts of nature before offering him a laughable hotel voucher. Theo was soaked, furious, and worst of all, out of options, so he called the person he least wanted to rely on. "Hey," Zion answered after one ring. "You okay?" Theo didn't even know what to say. "My ceiling hates me. Can I—" "Yes." I didn't finish the sentence. "You didn't have to." Zion's apartment was too clean, too warm, too lived in. Theo hovered near the doorway like an anxious cat, duffel bag slung over one shoulder and pride dangling by a thread. Zion pointed toward the hallway. "You can take the guest room. It's the second on the right." "I won't be here long." "Didn't ask you to be." Theo exhaled sharply and shuffled past him, brushing against Zion's shoulder. It wasn't even a full touch, but it was enough to light his nerves on fire. By day 3, domesticity was starting to feel like a trap. Theo tried to stay invisible, reading in the guest room, quietly microwaving leftovers, pretending Zion's voice didn't sound like home every time he hummed in the kitchen. But life had other plans, like brushing shoulders while grabbing the same mug, or falling asleep on the couch and waking up with a blanket tucked over him and the faint scent of Zion's cologne lingering nearby. Or the moment he walked into the kitchen and found Zion shirtless, sweat damp from a workout, back muscles flexing as he reached for a glass of water. Theo froze. His brain short-circuited, his mouth went dry. Then he slammed the pantry door shut like it had offended him and stomped back to the guest room. For hours he avoided eye contact. Zion didn't mention it, which somehow made it worse. It happened late one night. Theo couldn't sleep. The walls were too quiet. The silence pressed in like a weight. He wandered out into the living room, looking for tea or a distraction, or maybe just air. He found a half-open closet instead, and curiosity, that traitor, tugged him forward. Inside was a cardboard box, labeled simply, "High School." He should have stopped there, but his fingers moved before his guilt caught up. Inside were a few yearbooks, a worn-out hoodie, a medal, some ticket stubs, and one photograph. Faded, creased, a group photo from sophomore year. And there he was, Theo, sharp chin, guarded eyes, too skinny frame, and next to him, Zion. Arm draped over another boy's shoulder, but his eyes weren't on the camera. They were looking sideways. At Theo. Theo stared at the photo like it might set itself on fire. He didn't hear Zion until it was too late. "That was from our last tournament." Theo flinched and spun around. Zion stood at the edge of the room, barefoot, wearing pajama pants and a threadbare shirt, eyes unreadable. Theo lifted the photo. "You kept this?" Zion nodded. "Why?" Zion stepped closer. "Because that was the year I started noticing you." Theo's breath hitched. "You tormented me that year." "I know. You called me names. You made me hate myself." "I know," Zion said again, voice low. "I wish I could go back and beat the hell out of the kid I was." Theo's hand trembled around the photo. "You don't get to pretend you didn't break me." Zion walked forward slowly until they were almost toe-to-toe. "I'm not pretending," he said quietly. "I did break you, but I also never forgot you. And I never stopped wanting to fix what I ruined." Theo's throat closed up. "Then let me stay long enough to help you put it back together," Zion whispered. Silence stretched between them. And then, a shuddering breath from Theo. He didn't say yes, but he didn't walk away either. 2 days later, Theo had a panic attack in the hallway. It came without warning. One minute he was grabbing a towel. The next he was frozen, breath caught in his throat, his chest caving in, and the world tilting sideways. It wasn't the worst one, but it was close. And Zion found him like that, sitting on the floor, trembling, eyes wide and distant. Zion didn't touch him. He sat on the other side of the hallway, cross-legged, voice calm. "Theo, can you hear me?" Theo gave the smallest nod. "Okay, I'm right here. Just breathe with me, all right? In for 4, out for 4. They counted together. Again. And again. Zion talked about mundane things, his terrible experience with yoga, the time he broke his toe chasing a squirrel, the exact ratio of peanut butter to jelly. Theo's heartbeat slowed. His breathing leveled. He looked at Zion. "You didn't touch me." "I know," Zion said softly. "You don't like it when you feel trapped." Theo's lip trembled. He hadn't told anyone that. Not really. Not since. You remembered. I've been remembering a lot. They found a rhythm after that. Shared takeout containers became shared inside jokes. Zion's terrible morning breath became Theo's favorite excuse to throw a pillow at him. The tension between them became different, less like a wall, more like a tightrope, and they walked it every day until the night it snapped. It started with a movie, something dumb. Explosions, bad acting, popcorn between them on the couch. Theo had been laughing, genuinely. And then, during a lull in the action, he looked over. Zion was already watching him. Not the screen. Him. The silence turned heavy. Zion leaned in slightly. Theo didn't move. Zion's hand hovered at the side of his face. "Tell me to stop." Theo didn't. Their lips almost touched. Almost. Then Zion's phone rang. They jerked apart. Zion muttered a curse and answered. Theo stood, mumbled something. Escaped to the guest room with his heart thudding and his skin flushed and his mouth tingling like a promise left unfinished. He stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how the boy who once made him break was now the only man who made him want to be whole again. Chapter 4. Jealousy, Laughter, and the look he gives me when he thinks I'm not watching. Theo had never owned a suit that fit him properly. He always felt like he was either drowning in fabric or wrapped too tight, like the clothes didn't quite know what to do with him, too sharp at the edges, too stiff in the middle. But Zion had shown up outside his door that afternoon with a smirk and a sleek black suit bag slung over one shoulder. "What is that?" Theo asked, suspicious. Zion grinned. "Your armor." "My what?" "You're coming with me to the gala. Try it on." Theo's eyes narrowed. "No. Yes. No. I already told them I'm bringing someone. Don't leave me to the wolves." Theo crossed his arms. "Why me?" "Because I want you there." Theo's breath caught. Zion held up the bag like a peace offering. "Besides, it's custom. I know your measurements." That made Theo flustered in a way he refused to acknowledge. By the time they arrived at the charity gala, some absurdly luxurious rooftop event benefiting spinal injury research, Theo had already planned his escape route twice and memorized the location of every emergency exit. He stood stiffly beside Zion near the bar, sipping sparkling water and trying to look anywhere but directly at him. Zion, in a charcoal tux with the top button undone and his curls falling perfectly into place, looked like he belonged here. Like he belonged anywhere. Theo tried not to be jealous of that too, but when Zion leaned over and whispered, "You clean up dangerously well," Theo flushed from collar to ears. "Shut up!" "I'm just saying. They're going to start thinking I brought a model instead of a +1. Theo muttered something about kicking him in the shin. Zion just laughed and handed him another drink. It was supposed to be simple. But then he appeared. A tall, golden-haired orthopedic surgeon with perfect teeth and hands that lingered a second too long on Zion's arm. The man introduced himself as Dr. Callum Roth and launched into a clearly rehearsed flirtation, all compliments and charm, as if Theo weren't standing 3 feet away. Theo sipped his drink and said nothing for 5 excruciating minutes, until Callum reached out, brushing something off Zion's lapel. Something inside Theo snapped. "You're a doctor, huh?" he said with a saccharine smile. Callum looked over, polite but dismissive. "Orthopedics." Theo raised a brow. "So you basically work with bones all day and still thought touching someone else's date was a good idea?" Zion choked on his drink. Callum blinked. I didn't mean..." Theo leaned in slightly, voice dropping. "Yeah, no, I'm sure you meant to be completely harmless, just like every other man who gets handsy when they think no one will call them out." Callum's smile faltered. Zion cleared his throat, placing a hand on Theo's back, not pushing, just grounding. "We should go mingle." Theo let himself be led away, heart pounding. Zion didn't say anything until they reached the terrace. Then he burst out laughing. Theo frowned. "What?" "You just eviscerated a Harvard-trained surgeon with nothing but sarcasm and a plastic wine glass." "He touched you." Zion arched a brow. "That didn't sound like I'm over it." Theo looked away, lips pressed tight. Zion stepped closer. "I liked it." Theo blinked. "You liked that I almost started a scene at a black tie gala?" Zion smiled, a little softer now. "I liked that you didn't pretend not to care." Theo didn't respond. Didn't need to. The moment was already thick with what wasn't being said. Later, after the crowd had thinned and the music had softened into something slow and sultry, Zion led Theo to the rooftop balcony. The city lights glimmered below like scattered stars. The night was warm, the kind that hugged your skin instead of chilling it. Zion took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "Dance with me." Theo laughed. "No. Why not? I don't dance." "You also don't attend galas, and yet Zion gestured to Theo's immaculate suit. Theo shook his head. This is different. No, it's not, Zion said, reaching out with one hand. You just don't like doing things where you're not in control. Theo hesitated, then placed his hand in Zion's. Zion pulled him close, not too close, but enough. One hand on Theo's waist, the other cradling his palm. They began to move, slow and swaying, the rhythm more instinct than effort. And then Zion said softly, You always looked at me like I was your enemy. Theo's chest tightened. Zion's voice was low. But I think I always looked at you like you were my favorite mistake. Theo looked up. Zion's eyes were searching, open, vulnerable in a way Theo hadn't seen before. And for once, just once, Theo didn't overthink it. He leaned in first. Their lips brushed, a breath, then another. And the kiss deepened, slow and breathless and full of all the things they never said in high school, in the clinic, on Theo's worst nights and Zion's best intentions. Zion tasted like champagne and warmth and something Theo had tried too hard for too long to stop wanting. Zion pulled him closer, one hand curling behind Theo's neck, the other steady on his waist, and Theo let himself melt. The world faded around them. The lights, the music, the city, none of it mattered. Only Zion. Only this. Only the feeling of finally kissing the person he'd hated, craved, missed, and feared. All at once. They didn't stop. Not for a while. By the time they pulled apart, Theo's chest was heaving and his eyes were glassy. Zion rested their foreheads together. I wanted to do that since I was 17. Theo laughed, breathless and shaking. You had a weird way of showing it. I was scared. Theo nodded. So was I. Another beat. Zion whispered, Still are. Theo swallowed. Less now. They didn't go back inside. Not right away. They danced beneath the stars until the song ended, and when Zion kissed him again, longer, slower, sweeter, Theo didn't flinch. He leaned in, gave more, stayed. Chapter 5. I told him I couldn't love, so he showed me how it feels to be loved anyway. Theo woke up in Zion's bed. The sheets were warm. The light filtering through the curtains was soft and golden. The scent of Zion's skin still clung to the pillow beside him. And Theo's panic hit like a freight train. He sat up too fast, heart racing. The room was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made thoughts louder. He was naked beneath the covers. His clothes were folded neatly on the chair. His phone sat on the nightstand, a glass of water beside it. There was nothing chaotic about the room. And that terrified him more than any mess ever could. Because last night hadn't been chaos. It had been kind. Zion hadn't rushed, hadn't taken, hadn't demanded. He had kissed Theo like he was scared to stop, whispered his name like it was holy, held him like he was something precious. Theo couldn't breathe. He slid out of bed, careful not to make a sound, and began pulling on his clothes with frantic precision. His hands trembled. He shoved the last of his things into his bag, heart thudding so loud it drowned out reason. He wasn't made for this. For softness. For staying. He made it to the door before a voice behind him spoke. You leaving? Theo froze. Zion stood in the hallway, barefoot, sleepy-eyed, wearing nothing but sweatpants and a tired smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Theo looked away. I have to go. Zion nodded once. I figured. Theo hated that he wasn't angry, that he just looked disappointed. Zion stepped aside. I won't stop you. Theo hesitated. Aren't you going to ask why? Zion shrugged. I already know. Theo's throat tightened. Zion's voice was quiet. If you're still running, I'll wait until you're done. Theo didn't remember driving, didn't remember turning down the old neighborhood street or pulling into the overgrown driveway, but somehow he was there, staring at the cracked windows and flaking paint of his childhood home. The place hadn't been touched in years, just like the part of himself he'd buried here. He sat on the porch steps, duffel bag beside him, and stared at the empty swing set in the yard. His hands trembled in his lap. His chest ached, not with longing, but with something heavier. He hadn't meant to come here, hadn't meant to fall apart. But his body knew. It always knew where to unravel. The weight of last night pressed in. Zion's hands, Zion's voice, the way Theo had clung to him like he didn't know how to let go. And now he was alone again, on purpose. He reached for his phone, dialed, didn't speak, just listened to the line ring once. Then again, then, Theo? Zion's voice was soft, cautious. Theo didn't words, but he didn't hang up either. There was a pause. Then, where are you? Another pause. And then Theo whispered, home. Zion arrived 23 minutes later. He didn't knock. just walked up the porch steps and sat beside Theo like they were 17 again, sharing secrets and bad takeout in the dark. Theo stared straight ahead. Zion waited. The sun was setting, casting the street in gold. And finally, Theo said, "It wasn't the teasing." Zion glanced at him. "What?" "The reason I left. It wasn't what you said." Theo's fingers dug into the fabric of his jeans. "It was what you did one day, in junior year. Some seniors were giving me shit outside the locker room, and you," his voice caught, "you told them to back off." Zion blinked. "You said I was off limits, that they didn't get to touch me." "I remember that." Theo's voice cracked. "It was the first time anyone ever defended me. Ever. And I couldn't handle it. I couldn't figure out why you, the one who hated me, suddenly didn't." Zion didn't interrupt. Theo looked down. "You scared me more when you were kind." Silence. Then Zion reached over, gently taking Theo's hand. Theo didn't pull away. Their foreheads touched. The warmth between them was fragile. Bare. "You don't have to be unlovable just because someone once convinced you that you were," Zion said quietly. Theo squeezed his eyes shut. The porch creaked beneath them as the night deepened, as the last of the light faded. And then Theo whispered, "I don't want to run anymore." Zion nodded. "Then don't." They returned to the apartment after dark. Theo didn't unpack his bag. He didn't need to. Zion didn't ask questions when Theo wandered into his room and sat at the edge of the bed like something half wild, half willing. Zion simply came to him, slow, sure. Their kiss was different this time, less heat, more reverence. Zion peeled Theo's clothes off like unwrapping a gift he was afraid to break. Theo returned the favor, hands trembling, eyes never leaving Zion's. They didn't rush, didn't speak much, just touches and sighs and unspoken promises. When Zion finally pressed inside him, Theo gasped, not from pain, but from being held, from being wanted, from being known. Zion's fingers threaded through Theo's, grounding them both. They moved together, breath tangled, foreheads pressed close. And when Theo whispered, "Don't go," Zion kissed his cheek and whispered back, "Never." They didn't stop until Theo was boneless, breathless, undone, and finally quiet inside his own skin. In the weeks that followed, everything changed in small ways. Theo didn't go back to his old apartment. He told himself it was because the ceiling still leaked, but he never called the landlord. He started sleeping on Zion's side of the bed even when Zion wasn't home yet. He wore his hoodies, used his mug, started calling the apartment ours without realizing it. Sometimes he'd come home and find Zion humming in the kitchen, music low, shirt half tucked, and he'd just stand there in the doorway and watch. Zion always caught him, always smiled like Theo was the best view in the world. "You do that a lot," Zion said one night, pulling him into a kiss. "Do what?" "Look at me like you're memorizing me." Theo pressed their foreheads together. "I'm making sure this is real." Zion kissed him again. "It is." Theo didn't say it out loud, but he knew now. He'd spent years running from love because it never looked like this, never looked like soft mornings and strong hands and someone who waited. Now love looked like Zion. And Theo? He finally wanted to stay. Chapter 6. The man I ran from became the only one I'd ever want to run to. The sun streamed through the wide windows of the new apartment, cutting golden lines across the hardwood floors. Theo sat at the small kitchen table, fingers curled around a mug of coffee that Zion had placed in front of him with a sleepy kiss to the shoulder. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, everything was still. Theo read through edits for a manuscript he'd been hired to rewrite. The kind of work he used to dread, emotional, self-helpy, annoyingly optimistic. But now he didn't mind so much. The sentences felt softer. The words didn't scrape at his skin the way they used to. Maybe it was the sunlight, or the way his ankle didn't ache anymore. Or maybe it was Zion humming to himself in the bathroom, off-key, unapologetically. Theo's lips curved, a tiny, involuntary thing. Softness had settled into him like it belonged there. Their weekend trip was Zion's idea. "You've been glued to your laptop for 10 days straight," Zion said, tossing a duffel bag on the bed. "We're going somewhere." Theo blinked. "Like, outdoors?" Zion grinned. "Don't worry. There'll be Wi-Fi, and probably waffles." They drove with the windows down, the radio blasting a playlist that Zion proudly titled Road Trip 2K Gay. The first track was a syrupy pop song with more synth than sense. Theo made a face. "You have no shame." "I have taste. This is not taste." Zion dramatically sang along, grabbing Theo's hand and using it as a pretend microphone. Theo tried not to laugh. Failed miserably. "You're ridiculous," Theo muttered. "You love it." Theo didn't deny it. He secretly saved the playlist on his phone when Zion wasn't looking. The roadside diners were greasy and glorious. They kissed behind a gas station once, right next to a vending machine with half the buttons broken. Theo dragged Zion by the collar into the shadows, breathless and flushed. "Someone might see," Zion whispered, grinning against Theo's lips. Theo smirked. "Let them." They drove through hills and small towns, fingers laced between gear shifts, stopping whenever something looked interesting, or Zion wanted to kiss Theo in front of some ridiculous landmark. One night in a sleepy lakeside motel, they made love under cheap sheets and the softest morning light. Theo lay sprawled on his back, one leg thrown over Zion's, laughing as Zion tickled his side until they both collapsed, breathless and tangled. The intimacy wasn't just physical. It was the way Zion looked at him afterward, like Theo was something sacred. Theo buried his face in Zion's neck and whispered, "I think I'm starting to believe you." Zion kissed the top of his head. "Believe what?" "That this could be real." By the time they returned to the city, Theo had memorized every dorky track on that playlist. Back at the apartment, Zion handed him a small key. Theo stared at it. "It's just a key," Zion said, rubbing the back of his neck, "to the front door in case I'm not home, or in case you want to come home." Theo didn't hesitate. He took the key. No dramatics, no running, just a quiet, steady nod. "Okay." Zion looked stunned. "Yeah?" Theo leaned up and kissed him. "Yeah." 2 weeks later, they sat beneath a tree in the park, a checkered blanket under them and a lazy breeze threading through the grass. Zion had packed sandwiches. Theo had mocked them. "You forgot condiments." "I brought my love instead." "Disgusting." Zion threw a grape at him. Theo caught it in his mouth and smirked. "You're dangerously charming today," Zion said. "I'm always dangerously charming." "True, but today especially." Theo leaned back on his elbows, tilting his head toward the sun. "So what now? We just keep being happy? That's allowed?" Zion reached into the basket. "Funny you should ask." He pulled out a tiny velvet box. Theo sat upright so fast he nearly knocked the juice over. "What the hell is that?" Zion laughed. "Relax. It's not a ring. You'd bolt halfway across the city if I tried that right now." Theo narrowed his eyes. "Correct." Zion opened the box. Inside was a thin silver chain. Hanging from it was a tiny, delicate charm, an arched bridge, unburned, untouched, whole. Theo stared. "I know you spent a lot of time burning things," Zion said, "but I figured maybe it's time to keep one." Theo didn't speak for a long moment. Then he reached out, cupped the box gently, and whispered, "Put it on me." Zion fastened it around his neck, fingers brushing his skin. Theo turned, kissed him. They made love again that night, this time in their bed. Theo straddled him slowly, laughing softly against his mouth, mumbling things like, "You're mine now, you know." And, "I hope you like clingy boyfriends," between gasps and grins. Zion touched him like he was memorizing a prayer. They didn't rush. They held hands the whole time. Afterward, Theo curled into his chest, sweat slick and sleepy-eyed, tracing patterns on Zion's ribs. He whispered, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." Zion kissed his forehead. "You don't have to earn love, Theo. You just let it in." Theo smiled. Quiet, full, whole. The necklace glinted in the morning light as Theo stepped onto the balcony, coffee in hand. Zion followed, wrapping his arms around him from behind. Theo leaned back into him and whispered, "I spent years burning every bridge between us." Zion kissed his temple. Theo smiled. "And somehow you still found a way to carry me home."